Hi everyone. Okay, so I have to make this birch plywood hall table. Well, this is actually going to be used to store shoes, but I suppose that doesn't really matter. In any case, the first job is to break down the sheets into some more usable size pieces. So after cutting the main pieces for the carcass, the sides and the top and bottom, I mitered the ends and I have to put a rebate on the back for the piece of birch backing. Then I use a story rod to mark out the dominoes for the corners. And a couple of dominoes for the central divider. The top will need dominoed and the bottom I can screw through the bottom panel. I'm just using some custom sized ash dominoes. And I'm just dry fitting everything at this stage to make sure things are going to work the way they should. So this is the bottom of the unit where the central divider comes in. So this is what I was talking about before. A couple of screws that no one will ever see. Then I can take out all the dominoes after the dry fit, which is always quite difficult to do without wrecking the dominoes. So I find the vice grips work pretty well. So with the main box just loosely clamped up, I could add some glue into the back rebate and put the back panel in. This helps to square it all up. So I could square it up, pin the back in, and then start working on clamping the corners, especially the front edges, making sure they look mint. So this whole project takes 2 sheets of birch 18mm and 1 backing panel. I used a 9mm backing panel. So this piece I'm cutting up is the last piece, which is the 4 doors across the front. I needed 4 shelves for this little unit, and I really didn't have any offcuts that were going to work. So I cut a few strips down and just set up a really crude jig with the domino to make some frames up, and a rebate in the frame to take the rest of the 9mm plywood I have and make up essentially some picture frames, but they will be my shelves inside the unit. It actually worked out really well. So before the glue had fully gone off on the frame, I'd cut my panels and glued them in as well. There were some minor gaps on the carcass miters, the edge corners, so I just put some filler into those. And with the last scraps of birch ply, I was able to make up some really basic legs. And yep, I am using a pocket screw. Actually turned out to work really well for this job, so yeah. Now these look a little bit dicey on video. It looks like there's a really big gap at the joint. It's just a heavy pencil or pen line there. But just screwing them down to the bottom of the unit like this worked really well. So to lay out the hinges, I make a story rod that's the same size as the doors. then add a 2mm packer underneath, and then I can mark off where the center of the hinges will be. So with the two center doors, it's pretty straightforward. I can use a regular jig because they're just half cover hinges. The important thing here is to offset the hinges on opposite sides of the central divider, and this is going to stop the hinge screws smashing together, and that can really cause problems. So with a regular hinge jig, the setback is 37mm from the front edge to where I need to drill. Now on the ends of this unit, they are full inset doors, so we need to add another 18mm in from the edge of the carcass. So I've made my own little jig up. People don't seem to make them, so it's a very simple jig that just adds 18mm to that already 37mm measurement that is required. And before you add any hardware, it's a good idea to now drill the shelf buttonholes, and the hinges won't get in the way. You can see there how I've offset the hinges. It's just a matter of keeping track of which door needs to be drilled in which way. Because all of the doors are fully inset, I added a simple little door stop at the bottom. And with all the doors hung, I could now work out where to cut for the finger holes. So I started by really roughly cutting out the shape on the bandsaw. Using a router template jig I already have, screwed that to the back of the doors, and then using a flush trim bit with a bearing, I could follow my jig and clean up the finger hole. And I just added a little bit of filler into those two screw holes in the back of the door. Never even noticed them. And that looks pretty cool, I reckon. So all the shelves and the inside of the unit got a couple of coats of water-based polyurethane. And on the outside I used Minwax wipe-on poly, which I think I did about 4 coats on this, and it really turned out awesome on the Birch Ply. I was pretty impressed with the finish. And there we go, a pretty cool looking kind of modern sideboard. It could be used anywhere really for any use. Like I said earlier, in this case it's going to end up being by a front door, so it'll be full of shoes most of the time, but I could see it pretty much anywhere in a modern kind of setting. So anyway, hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching everyone.